You're listening to the We Are Libertarians podcast network. Find all of our shows at wearelibertarians.com.
Hey folks, Brian Nichols here from The Brian Nichols Show. Are you tired of partisan politics? Do you want to hear the news without that media narrative? Do you want to be more well-rounded as a person? Or how about this? Do you want to get to know and learn from noted entrepreneurs, elected officials, C-level executives, economists, and more? Well, how about this? Look no further. Welcome to The Brian Nichols Show. Again, I'm your host, Brian Nichols. Go ahead and learn more at briannicholsshow.com.
Okay, so hear me out. You like getting cash back for the normal stuff you buy throughout your week, right? Of course you do. Check out the Dosh app. That's D-O-S-H, Dosh. Dosh is available at the App Store and Google Play Store and securely connects to your credit or debit card. From there, every time you use those cards, Dosh searches for available offers. Once it finds one, Dosh automatically redeems the offer and converts it into cold, hard cash. Muchos dineros, brother? Then deposits that directly into your Dosh wallet. Click the link to download and join Dosh today and get $5 just for joining. This link is exclusively in the show notes of this episode. So, show notes, special link, Dosh, $5 cash. Start on the path to quick and easy cash back on the things you love today.
Hey everybody, check out the Break the Bell podcast, where we believe your voice is your most powerful weapon. We're a weekly dose of our take on what's going on in the world, mixed with a side of history. Find us wherever podcasts are found or on social media handle at Break the Bell Pod. And most importantly, never stop talking.
Prepare yourself. You're on the run with Remso W. Martinez.
So by the time you're listening to this, congratulations, you've survived the election. I don't know who won and who didn't. But this channel isn't about politics. This channel is not about the news. This channel is for people who actually take action in their lives and try and actually do something. Because the only freedom that ultimately matters is the freedom to make decisions and to have choices available, so that way you can maximize what you can achieve in your life. And if there's one thing that, always intrigues not only me, but many of you, it's, the dreams that often seem like they're too distant, like they're too far, that they're too hard. And one of the biggest pleasures of my life is actually getting to speak with many authors who have already either come out with a book or are getting to work on their book for the first time. I think the one thing that is a positive that's come out of the pandemic is that a lot of people have begun to really take into account how much time they have to actually go after projects, whether it's taking care of your health, taking a proper evaluation of your finances, or maybe even getting to that book you've wanted to write for so long. That's been so much fun. I think I've spoken to more authors in the last 6 months than I have in the past 6 years. And, oftentimes people look around and they think, well, I have to be a J.K. Rowling or something. I've got to get that Harry Potter money in order to become an author. But every day we need to understand that the internet, that the tools at our disposal, that the ability to learn and develop and become better authors are there at our disposal. It's just a matter of time as to whether or not you're actually going to go through with it. And I can certainly tell you that when I started as a blogger to when I eventually became a researcher, and then when I ended up being a columnist, my journey was still there. My first book is not great. My second book is good. But even now, I'm still developing. And one of the things I really love to do is get to speak with people who have already blazed a trail in their own lives, and they've tried to achieve that. Now, I'm going a little bit out of my depth today. For those of you that know a little bit about me, know that I've never really written anything other than nonfiction. My second book was fiction, but it was a historical fiction, so I still had to focus on a lot of stuff. One of the things I've never necessarily been brave enough to do is to actually jump into the world of science fiction. That's something I've always wanted to do, but it's always been something that I felt I don't necessarily have the skill set for. So this episode is really not just an opportunity for you to learn, but hopefully I'm going to learn something out of it. And what I went ahead and did was I invited my friend Martin on. He's going to go ahead and talk to you about his process and everything else. For those of you that don't know him, his first book came out in 2015. It was titled Still Following. Less than 3 years after that, he was not only able to quit his day job, but he was able to write full time and effectively retire at 57. if you're a millennial like me, you're probably not going to be able to retire until 95. So what do you think about that? Other than that, he had a great career as a research scientist, and he actually has a weekly webcomic up on his blog. Martin, thank you so much for coming on. I mean, how many books have you written since 2015? Because I feel like the list goes up each time I go on Facebook and see you working on it.
Well, I thanks for having me on. I've just released my 7th novel. It's titled Shadows of the Sentinel. All science fiction primarily, although one of my books was swords and sorcery fantasy type. I tried that, and I really enjoyed doing it. I'll probably end up doing a little bit more of that.
So I got to ask, when did this start for you? Because a lot of people, they're afraid to try and balance a job and find time to write. And I know that you have a family yourself, so you not only had to balance your actual job, but then you had to balance your family life. When did you, finally take the time to say, I'm going to start writing a book? And, what really sparked that? What were the challenges that you encountered? And what was it like when you were actually able to say, hey, I'm done working and I'm just going to do this full time? What was that journey like? Because I think that's the thing that stops a lot of people from doing it. They're afraid, or they don't know what first step to take.
Yeah, for me, it was a really long journey because I started trying to write a novel in the mid 80s. I started, and I could never get far enough. I would always get, very excited about it and start writing. I get wrapped around the axle in the middle, and I could never finish it. And it plagued me for years and years and years that I couldn't do that. And then finally, it was always on my bucket list. A thing I wanted to do. I wanted to write a novel. I had lots of ideas. I had lots of fits and starts on books. But it took a lot of planets to align to actually make the whole thing happen. Actually, the inciting incident in my writing career was the fact that out of the blue, my brother died at 52. And it was a real kick in the gut for me, and it completely made me reassess so many things about my own personal life. What did I want to get done? Because you never know when you're going to go. And writing a novel was one of those things that I really needed to do. Another planet that aligned there is that in the same springtime, I got a severe spine injury. And what that did is it laid me up so that I found out how fast, Facebook and Netflix can get boring. So I started writing just for my sanity's sake. And it's amazing if you sit down and you write every day. And if you have an idea of what you're doing, suddenly you've got a novel. And I actually was also lucky that I actually knew a couple of novelists in my personal life. And they gave me a lot of really great advice on how to get it done, if you really want to do the thing, how to make the thing happen. And so I really credit them with a lot of really great advice about outlining and about treating writing as a job instead of just waiting for the muse, where if you just sat around waiting to be inspired all the time, you'd never really get anything done. If you sit down, with your coffee every morning, you sit down and you write like it's a job. Suddenly, inspiration knows where to find you, and so it's a lot more easy now to actually write a novel. Now that I have settled and I've moved away from, I lived up in the outskirts of DC, in commuter range of where I was working at the time. We sold our huge McMansion there, and we moved down to Fredericksburg, and I got a nice house, got settled in here. And now writing a novel, it only takes me about 12 weeks to do the first draft of a novel now, and another 12 weeks to do the editing. I love the first draft part. That is fun for me. That's all fun. Editing is work.
Editing is like taking
Editing is really
and like bleeding them dry.
Yeah,
I mean, there are a few points that you brought up that I want to touch on because it just kind of hit me. I've got some eerie similarities, and folks, we did not discuss this beforehand. This is the first time that we've actually had this conversation. But for me, I started working on my first book in 2016. It would later come out in 2018. One of the things that prompted me to do that was a good childhood friend of mine who I had known for 12 years. This guy was in the ROTC program at Virginia Tech. He was an airborne guy. I mean, he was going to go on to be a Green Beret, just a pinnacle of health and just a really good person. And in 2016, when I moved back to Virginia, he died of a heart attack in his car as he was dropping his fiance off. And that was one of the hardest situations I've had in my life, because it was like losing a brother in a sense. I mean, we had grown up together. We had gone through a lot of obstacles together. And, it was really hard on me. So that was one of those moments where it really made me, and it feels weird. As of this year, I'm officially three years older than he would have been. He was 23 when he died. I'm turning 26 in December. It's just eerie knowing that I've been on the earth longer than he was. So that was one of those things that just, it still kind of sends chills up my arm and stuff. It's strange, but that was one of those moments that really did it for me. I mean, I've had death in my life. It's something that I'm familiar with, but that was the one that really affected me down to my core. And secondly, at the end of 2016, I was in a car accident that deeply affected my neck and my head. And because of that, I live with chronic neck pain. And nothing is like sitting in bed on painkillers all day, wondering what are you going to do if you're going to be able to do anything, that makes you wonder what you actually want to do. I think it wasn't until I had that opportunity that I actually started finishing up the first draft. With that in mind, I don't think you have to go through something serious to become an author, but I think there are serious things that make authors serious writers. What's the mindset and what's the attitude that you think separates actual career writers from people that think about it but never actually take the step to doing it?
Yeah, I actually belong to several writers groups, so I get to interact with budding authors quite often. And I think that for me, at least, I can only tell you what it does from my perspective. One of the lessons that I learned that actually it differentiates a professional author is not inspiration, and it's not creativity. It's discipline. It is actually treating it like a job. It is a job. It's a career. And if you don't feel like writing and you still are gonna go and make yourself sit down at the desk and actually bring the thing up and do the work, suddenly, once you get to a point, the discipline brings success into it more than anything else, more than, reading all the books you can find about writing, more than, all the creativity in the world, all the ideas that you can have in the world. And then the other lesson I learned is that you got to stick to a single project and see it all the way through to fruition. You have to hammer through. I call it chasing butterflies. Have you ever seen a dog in a field chasing butterflies, and then suddenly there's a different butterfly? It goes off in this. I know so many authors that'll start writing a novel, and then they'll have this other great idea, and and then they'll say, "Oh, I've got writer's block on my novel, so I'm going to go work on this thing," and they never finish anything. That's a real landmine for most authors, and that's what really stops most of the authors that I know from actually getting to the end where you actually have it polished and done, and all the business parts and all of the mechanics of putting a book together, everything that you need to do to actually get it out there and get successful, and then move on to the next one. And so many people get wrapped around the axle just like I used to for decades. And that lesson has really helped me a lot. Also, it helps me that I'm a really big time outliner. I do really detailed.
I got to tell you, my biggest problem is that I do outlines, but I'm a pantser. I'm constantly, I feel like I have to write, and hopefully I'll figure things out as I go along. Do you think that that's the only way that has helped you, finish something from start to finish?
No, I think that every author has to recognize what kind of writer that they are. And because I'm a very organized, outlining type of author, for me, it is absolutely proof against writer's block for me. Because when I start my novel, it actually starts on pad and paper, where I will start outlining. I have very specific methodologies that I use for outlining now. And like the outline for my most recent novel, it was about 36 pages long. And it ends up the entire novel, scene by scene, chapter by chapter, scene by scene. I take that and I apply it into the writing tool that I use, and I'm good. I'm ready to go. When I sit down in the morning with my cup of coffee, I never have writer's block because I know exactly what I need to work on. And if I don't feel like working on this particular chapter, I may go and do another one. But it's very organized for me, and it has turned out to be a successful process for me. Now, it's not for everyone. Some people I know just cannot bear the thought of having to do an outline, and they, in fact, can't do it. And they're complete pantsers, but a lot of them get painted in the corner horribly with that kind of stuff. Especially science fiction.
Yeah, I do not advise people do what I do. I think the only reason why I'm able to get by with it is because a lot of the work I've done is nonfiction. Therefore, the outline is there and all my notes are there. So it really prevents me from going off on too many tangents. But I will say, for the attempts that I have had at doing fiction, pantsing never works. Because this is why I think so highly of science fiction writers. You have to know your stuff inside and out. And when you're creating these worlds, you're creating so many different layers of it, you cannot afford to forget one detail. And that is the one.
Science fiction readers are absolutely the most detailed readers that there are. I like to really read as a researcher for my career, my entire career. I was a research scientist, so I use those skills in writing science fiction, and I like the science in my books to be right, and so that if you get all the real science right, when you dip your toe in the waters that are just across the line into faster than light travel or artificial gravity, you're more plausible. And it's really funny to get an email from a reader that says, "Oh my God, do you realize that the space station with the rings moving at 22 meters per second gives you exactly 1 G if the ring is 1 kilometer across?" And I go, "Well, yeah, I kind of knew that because I figured that out. They actually wrote it that way on purpose." I never expected anybody to detect that in there, but they do. I mean, and they'll happily email you about it. It's
oh my gosh, I host another podcast with a friend of mine, Mark Clare. It's called the Second Print Comics Podcast, and we discuss the comics and pop culture that made us the fans who we are. And it wasn't until I did that I realized I know that authors get a lot of hate, and like with the comic book community, it's very much like that because continuity is a big stickler. And if you mess up one thing, people will never forgive you. I kind of want to rewind just a little bit. What you said about writer's block I thought was really interesting. I'm interested to hear what more you have to say on that because, and this is my opinion, this is purely me, I don't believe that writer's block is as real of a menace as people say. I believe that most people use it as an excuse, and because of that, it's become somewhat of a cultural cliche.
Mm-hmm. For my opinion is, I have no personal evidence that writer's block exists at all. I have never had it. If there is something opposite from writer's block, writer's gush, I guess, that's what I've got. I've got more ideas in my notebooks here than I will ever be able to write novels for until I'm dead. So writer's block is never a thing for me. There is issues that I do have, things like loss of momentum. If I get interrupted or if I break a project in the center and I stop writing for a few days in the middle, it takes me so much time to get ramped back up and get in the groove to finish. That's why I like to hammer through first drafts nonstop, uninterrupted.
Yeah, I feel, and you probably understand this having been a researcher yourself, like I did policy analysis for a while. I used to think that writing white papers was fun and would change the world for politicians and think tanks. And the one thing I learned about that, which is what helped me in college, I was never necessarily a great student, but I could always write myself to an A. I guess that was the only skill I had. But the one thing I realized was as long as you know your left and right limits and you understand what the end goal should look like, actually getting there is never the problem. And that's why I've had like sagging middle syndrome and stuff like that happen. But writer's block, I think for every 3 clients I've worked with who are finishing off their first draft or something, 2 of them will say that writer's block have prevented them from finishing. And then as I try and walk them back to understand where they got lost, I realized that it wasn't a lack of inspiration, but it was a lack of direction and understanding where they wanted to go. And I think part of that is one, and these are primarily fiction writers, but they lose an idea of what they want their book to end like. And then the others who are doing nonfiction, they tend to drift away from what their initial thesis was. So it never has anything to do with lack of understanding of what to put there, but it's usually just a lack of focus. And that I think comes from lack of discipline.
I've also seen it on several occasions that it is a very common kind of self-sabotage for authors. I mean, they start to get close to, having a book ready to publish, and suddenly writer's block, grips them with fear because they're afraid somebody might read it. Somebody might give them a bad review. Somebody might say something awful about their magnum opus, and it cripples some people so that they actually never finish stuff. And I think that one of my superpowers is I don't give a shit what people think. You give me a 1-star review. I love those. Thanks for buying my book, dude. It really is true that, there's so many people they're like so afraid of reviews. It's like, the hell with it. You should be working on your next book now. Forget the reviews. Don't even read them. My wife reads them. It's hilarious. She loves to read them. She, loves those 1-star reviews, and my favorite was I got a 1-star review and it said, "This is science fiction. I hate science fiction. Thanks for buying my book." I was just like, why did you buy the book? It's funny.
The internet's a weird place.
What's that?
The internet's a weird place.
It really is. And it's funny. Amazon is really weird about reviews too. That I was so proud of that review all the time. I wanted to quote it in some of my subsequent books, but Amazon took it down. I don't know why they delete reviews periodically. It seems like, but it's Very interesting phenomenon.
When
in my writers group, it's funny. My the person that runs the writers group, and all the published authors in the group, if they get a 1-star review, they get this little troll. You know those trolls that are got hair.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we get that as a trophy. It's pretty funny. It takes the edge off for a lot of people that care.
I always felt like 1-star reviews end up actually proving your point on some things.
Yeah.
Like for me with my books, because they were primarily political nonfiction, no one ever attacked me as an author. They were always giving me 1-star reviews because they were attacking the premise of my books. So then I would use that in like newsletters and marketing material and end up making more sales because of them. If you can learn how to make money off of your haters, that's an amazing thing. But I am curious, when you finished your draft for your first book and you were actually getting ready to edit and you were eventually able to publish it, were you nervous about anything?
Oh, yeah, because not knowing what I was doing when I did my first novel, the first draft of my first novel clocked in at over 1,000 pages. And
how many words is that?
Oh, it was 240,000 words, I think.
Wow.
And it was way too big. It was just huge. Yeah, I was just like,
I know fiction typically has to be bigger, but that's like Lord of the Rings
James
level right there.
Thick. And it was like crazy. And I had too many characters, and because of the way that I wrote it and my inexperience about doing things, the first thing I had to do was go back and really cut with a chainsaw a lot of it out. In fact, a lot of the stuff that I cut out, I actually used in other novels. And in fact, the first 3 novels in my career it's actually a trilogy, the Solstice 31 trilogy. Every one of those novels actually begins at the same instant in time. It is just kind of a Rashomon story where it shows the experience of different people from the same event and from different perspectives. And by the time you get to the last book, all the characters from all the books have come together for the ultimate climax, as it were. But it was really fun writing those things, and it's still fun, still really, really fun.
I think the biggest thing that I try and let people know is, for me, the moment I came out with my first book was almost no different than the moment I came out with my second book. That rush of excitement, that experience of getting really just to own a couple days amongst your people that support you and friends and family and coworkers. What was your experience like when you came out with your first book? What was that real moment really like?
Well, the first really big moment was when I got the first proof in the mail, when it was an actual physical edition that you could hold in your hands. Like, suddenly it's like, holy shit, this is real. And the next biggest moment like that, I was really nervous when it actually got published and people could buy it. The very first review that I got, that was really awesome. And which oddly enough was a guy in Australia, of all places, was the first guy to put a review in. The next thing was the first royalty check.
My God, yes.
Yeah. After that, it was the first royalty check, and it was a physical check. I still have it. I deposited it with my phone, but I still have it. And I was all excited about that. I didn't care that it was only $241, and I took my wife out for an incredibly good dinner, and I was very, very excited about that, which was way different than the next royalty check. When it came, it was so much bigger. Suddenly, I was scared shitless about taxes.
That's a good problem to have, though, at that point.
That's a good problem to have. And because my wife and we both have great jobs, we didn't need that money. So I just opened a separate bank account and all my royalty checks just got piled into that account. And so it I figured, okay, I'm going to have to pay 35% of that to the government come tax time, because they're not withholding anything. The way Amazon does it, it's all straight up 1099s or whatever the hell the thing works. And the funny conversation for that was, at year's end, we were talking to our financial advisor. And now this is for like my 401k and all that kind of stuff, the investment portfolio bullshit, all that. And just at the end of that conversation, my wife wanted me to ask her about this to see if she had any recommendations. So I brought the file that had all the info associated with that, and she looks at me and she says, "Dude, you need an accountant." And the funniest part was, she recommended an accountant, which I still have. I love my accountant. And so I get there and I take all this stuff in to the accountant, and the accountant's going over everything. Frankly, she can't believe that, I haven't spent any of the money that I brought in. And she looks at me and she says, literally, "Dude, you need a lawyer."
Oh, it just keeps escalating.
Yeah, it did. And it really escalated from there. Suddenly, I had created an LLC that's taxed as an S corp, and all this other stuff, and royalty payments get applied in there, and there's all these weird rules, and I just let the lawyer and the accountant take care of all of that, and because it's not writing. It's actually really interesting. The very first year after I started writing full time, I spent a lot of time on the business end of it. And it is crazy, all the details associated with it. And
you self-published, right?
Yeah.
I know that you have your own imprint, but you started just like a generic Amazon self-published author.
It was CreateSpace in 2015.
Oh wow, yeah, I remember that now.
Yeah,
they changed it to
KDP.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you're correct. I am self-published. They call them indie published now, because it's kind of I had created a small press that is an independent corporation that I actually use to publish my works through. That actually has turned out to be a really good tool for being able to foster the business associated with it. It's really interesting that the difference between self-published authors and indie published authors and brick and mortar old school published authors. And right now, because the industry is changing so much, the lines are really blurring between all of those. And if the books you publish are indistinguishable from big house books, you can professionally make your way. It is, and I also happen to get really lucky. I'm not saying my books are the best books in sliced bread or anything, but it turns out that the genre that I'm writing in, which is science fiction for adults who have one click set up on their Kindle, right? Because, the guy that's on the train, I need something else to read. What am I going to read? And then the Amazon recommendation engine fires up and starts working. And I was very lucky because my single biggest marketing success was that I happened to have a friend in college who's now famous. and his name's Dan Povenmire. He created the show Phineas and Ferb. He's Doofenshmirtz on that show.
My gosh, that's my childhood right there.
Yeah, well, Dan was an old friend of mine from college and stuff, and He had friended me on Facebook, and we caught up, and it's really funny. He worked on The Simpsons for many, many years. Well, it's funny. He tweeted out one day, "Hey, check it out! My college buddy Marty wrote a book," and I sold 7,000 books in one day, and it was crazy, and it was a giant spike. My book went to number 1 on the hard science fiction category and all this kind of stuff. But more than that, I learned something about the Amazon machine. There is this ginormous artificial intelligence-driven database machine on Amazon that once you get enough sales associated with your book, once your author name starts to get associated with a genre and a type of reader, that little recommendation engine on the bottom starts to get populated. And I was extremely lucky. I mean, I am talking super lucky, because the recommendation engine was coming up for the people that were buying The Martian. Hey, if you like The Martian, you might like this book. And suddenly my sales were going up and up and up, and I needed an account.
Well, was that, oh my gosh, was that just when the book came out, or was it when the movie came out and then the book became a bestseller again?
It was before the movie came out.
Oh, wow. So you were really there on the ground level for that.
Yeah, and that was for Still Falling. And I can understand why they recommend that, because Still Falling is a Robinson Crusoe kind of story. Guys get stranded on a planet, turns out to have humans on it already. Anyway, my second novel, because the first novel was so popular, the second novel, the sales immediately caught in. People were, clamoring for it. And the recommendation engine for my second novel started gearing up. People that were reading The Expanse were being recommended my second novel, The Broken Cage, because it's the same kind of story as The Expanse. People like The Expanse. Oh, you might like this too. So that book actually hit number 1 at one point in the hard science fiction category on Amazon. So it went from there. And it's all about the recommendation engine on Amazon. And if I knew how that thing worked under the hood, I'd write a book about that.
Oh, you'd make so much money. You do never, even if you still figure that out, never give that information out for free.
Yes, I know, exactly.
As somebody that would ask you to give it to me for free, don't give it out for free.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because the genre, the timing, the time of year that something gets released, they're all very complex cogs in this machine under the hood that I have absolutely no idea how it works.
I am kind of curious, because we've been kind of touching on it with this focus. Do you find that, and how do I put this? I find a lot of writers are really bad marketers. And I'm not talking like bad marketers. I mean, I saw this with journalists. They are shitty promoters. And I never understood why somebody who has put so much effort into writing and publishing a book, they don't understand that if you want people to actually read it and buy it, you actually have to promote it. And I'm just curious, did you ever find the promotion part of it, one, daunting, or two, did you like it as just the next phase of the book process? Because a lot of people see them as divorced. I see them as just part of the same long campaign.
It is a constant campaign, because if you actually you want to do it as a job, the business side of the job is just as important as the creative writing part, and a lot of authors don't get that.
100%.
They completely divorce themselves from the book after they've pressed publish, and they never do another thing, and then they just wonder why. Hey, I've only sold 16 books. Why is that? And the marketing is really important, and it's actually the hardest part of the whole thing. And in fact, after I retired, I actually hired a PR firm I was making enough money I could afford it, and they did a big rebranding and all of these marketing things, and they tooled up a new website for me, and it was all very exciting, and all the new covers on all my books and all of that, and it really did help for the sales and everything. Even new business cards and iconography and stuff like that, and I spent a lot of money with them and learned a lot. And it's really interesting, the things that generate sales are stuff that I never would have expected. Because ever since I started my writing journey, I've been blogging. The blog that I have goes back to when I just finished my first draft, just finished writing it and started editing it. And that's when my blog starts. You see the early shitty covers that I was thinking about. You go through all of the shenanigans for all the publications, all my books, and it's very interesting. And people actually like seeing the saga once they become a fan and stuff. But it's really cracks me up is that one of my college buddies is an artist. He's a commercial artist for his career. And he started sending me these dumbass cartoons of me being an author and my cat, my favorite cat, who's constantly in pictures with me on Facebook and is always in my face and all that. And the premise of the comic was it's me being an author and my cat wisecracking like he's my editor and my agent. And so I started putting these up as a lark on my blog. I started getting more hits on the stupid cat cartoon than anything else I put on my blog. So I actually credit that stupid dumbass cartoon, which still comes up every Sunday. I still do it every Sunday. I actually credit that book with a lot of sales because people come to my blog, they see, on the ribbon on the side, the books that I have available and stuff like that. And it was to the point that in my novel, Virtues of the Vicious, the cat made an appearance in this novel. And oh my God, the email I got from people loving the cat, demanding that the cat be in my next novel. I had to put the cat in the next goddamn novel. I can't believe it. So the cat was very popular. And it's really funny because I would find, I would have these mystery spikes in sales. It's like, what the hell is this all about? And then at the same time frame, my wife would say, oh yeah, they were talking about your book on that Siamese cat rescue, Facebook group that's got 30,000 members. And that was really interesting business component that taught me in your life, you develop a lot of tribes in your life. And I've always been reluctant to market to my friends and my family and stuff. I'm really uncomfortable about that. I have a separate author Facebook page for my own personal family, friends and family Facebook page and stuff like that. But I found out that there's tribes in your life that when they find out that you are an author, they get really excited about it. And you actually can sell a lot of books to good effect there. And it's interesting because things like this PR firm said, oh, hey, what have you been doing about press releases? And I go, press releases? Really?
I had a policy for myself: never write your own press release.
Yeah, and
I will till the day I die. Just farm that out to someone else.
Yeah, I believe that's true, but it's interesting. The college I went to in my hometown ended up getting a press release, and I got interviewed by the lifestyles editor for the magazine about my first 3 novels, and right there, hometown boy does good. Suddenly, I had another spike in sales and stuff. It's really interesting, the marketing machine, because you never know what spins it up. You never know the timing. You never know. And it's really weird because Amazon makes it really hard
Oh, their entire businesses based around how to skyrocket your ship, how to skyrocket your book to be number one on the Kindle lending library and everything else. And all you have to do is pay $15 a month, and eventually you'll find the right keywords to make yours the best-selling book in your category. And I look at that, and it's like, if people have to pay you monthly to figure that out, then are they really getting what they actually paid for?
Yeah, I don't get that. And the weird thing is it's even made more complicated because I have a lot of international sales. I sell a lot of books all around the world. I kind of thought, okay, I expect that. I'll sell books in Australia and the UK and Canada and in other places. But I mean, Greece is a big buyer. Greece? They love science fiction in Greece? Japan's a big buyer. Japan, they always pay their royalties first. And the weird thing is Amazon, every one of those regions in the world have their own Amazon, their own reporting, their own review systems. I sell a lot of books in Germany, and I have reviews on the German Amazon site written in German. My book isn't in German. So that is a very interesting phenomenon, but it makes it almost impossible to figure out how many books you sold, because the accounting is completely different for Kindle. It's separate from Kindle and Kindle Unlimited. It's separate for the paperback sales. It's separate for my hardcover sales. And I actually sell a lot of audio editions too. All my novels have been recorded in Audible. And so all of those things are completely separate revenue sources. And all of those things require attention that if you pay too much attention as an author, it's too distracting. So I've just given up. I used to try to do spreadsheets and try to monitor all that crap and figure out, okay, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? Where can I, spend my marketing dollars to get the greatest impact and stuff? And the reporting facility is just so whack. And I just don't want to spend the time doing it. So now the only thing I monitor is how much money gets deposited in my account every month.
Literally, though. I mean, I've seen massive spikes and giant dips, and it got to the point where it was like, it stopped trending after like a couple of weeks. My first book was a bestseller in its category. My second one wasn't. But, it got to the point where it's like, I still know I'm selling books, and most of the time when I try the hardest, I realize I'm getting the least returns, probably because I'm bugging people. But, after a while, your books kind of have to move on to a degree to move on to your other projects. And what I tell people is, like, as you write one book, you're going to want to write another. And as long as you keep writing, publishing, and marketing, all you have to do is just repeat the process, and eventually it'll be a compounding effect. And two things I want to touch on that you brought up. I mean, in terms of marketing, I want to give a shout out to two of my publicists I've worked with, Gabriella Hoffman and Chloe Anagnos. I worked with them, each for one of my books. Gabriella Hoffman worked on my first book. Chloe Anagnos worked on my other. And, I recommend them always to people. They were both fantastic. But, for a lot of indie authors and self-published authors, a lot of their big concerns is being taken seriously. And what I tell people is, listen, if you're going to go in and you're going to put all the upfront costs towards self-publishing your book, you might as well make sure you have a really good marketing plan. I actually took up a second job just to pay my publicist. It mattered to me that much because my first book had problems. I mean, it did. And luckily, because I had a good publicist, I was able to outsell a lot of my colleagues that were doing it through traditional publishers. I've got the story of a guy I know. He wrote through Regnery, a book about immigration, and it was endorsed. It had a written testimonial by Jeb Bush, and he's never seen, an actual check from that book. He got like a small advance, but it never made enough money to actually give back royalties. And that's something people don't realize. Just because people buy your book a year after it comes out still does not mean you're making money if they haven't broken even with those costs. And for his promotion, the publisher only did like 2 weeks worth of stuff. They did a press release and got him on one radio station, but that was it. I had a really hardworking publicist who just worked only for me, and both of them worked their heart outs. And luckily, the first one was able to get a lot of attention. It was endorsed by Ben Shapiro, and when that happened, the sales went crazy. And then for the second one, it was a different audience because it was historical fiction. It did how it did. But, it was almost indistinguishable. People thought that it was done through a traditional publisher. And it was like, no, all I did was I put in the effort and I put in the work with these professionals to make it that way. And secondly, I mean, what you said about developing a tribe, I don't think people understand this enough. We live in a hyper-connected world where we often look at numbers, but I would rather have 500 people who support me in every project I do because they genuinely believe in me than have 5 million strangers that will never support anything I do. And I say this as a positive, but my first book had problems. It was, I did it very amateurly. There were problems with the cover. There were problems with the text. There were typos. There were problems with it. And I was 21, 22 when I came out with it, and I made a lot of mistakes. I thought I did a good job, but I got a lot of one-star reviews because of the process. Because I had made those mistakes, what I did was I crowdfunded for my second book, citing the mistakes I did with my first book. I raised all the money I needed to self-publish within 3 weeks. Because people saw the work I put in, they had liked my content and my products before that, and they believed in me, and they were able to help me so that way I didn't have to spend $1 out of pocket on it. And it's those people that keep me going and keep me working on other projects because they value me and I value them. And it's that tribe network that will support you through everything else you do. I don't think enough people understand the importance of that because these people, without you even having to ask, will give you their hard-earned money. You better deliver them something good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of these things that I don't think a lot of people realize because they just want it to be that point where they're just becoming rich and they're just becoming famous. But I think, really being able to achieve certain levels of freedom in your life are more important. To kind of, rewind a little bit, what was the conversation like when you decided that you were actually going to quit your career to become a full-time author? What was the conversation like with your wife for that?
Well, that is another funny story. I wasn't expecting to retire, not even close. And I typically take the time between Christmas and New Year's off for vacation at my work, and the Friday before my vacation, I had my year-end meeting with my financial advisor, and thank God my wife was there because how accountants, they love pie charts and bar charts and
they gotta be paid for something.
Yeah, trend analysis and worst case scenario, best case scenario. And she's done doing this big presentation, and she leans across the desk and says to me, "Why the hell are you still working?" And then she points at my wife and she goes, "You could quit your job too." and it's like,
wow.
We're like, what? And she went in detail, and I got to tell you, she did a great job making my wife comfortable about the whole thing. And the funny thing was, I wasn't expecting to retire, but on January 2nd, when I went back into the office, I had my resignation letter ready. And I resigned. My last day was February 16th of 2018. 2018. It's going to be 1,000 days soon on vacation.
What does it feel like? Did you ever think you were going to be able to retire this early from writing?
No, I figured, okay, 65. That'd be cool. I don't want to work till my 70s or 80s like some people do. Forget that. I don't want to do that. But I figured just to do the thing, I would have to work until I was 65. I was fully prepared for that. And never in my wildest dreams did I think that something would go well enough that I could pull something off. And I am very lucky. I am absolutely, I don't want anybody to think that I've got all the answers and this follow the path that Marty took. I just got lucky. I don't have any idea how all of this happened. And but boy, I love my new lifestyle with writing full time. It is a pure joy every day. I get to drink coffee and make stuff up. And then people send me money. How cool is that?
There you go.
Yeah, seriously.
So, sir, as we got to start wrapping things up, I'm just curious. If you could go back, like, let's say 20 years to your younger self, what's some of the advice you would give, if you could?
Oh, I really wish I had started earlier. Now, the weird part is 20 years before I started writing, you didn't have the opportunities you have now. The technology of print on demand and the ability to actually do indie publishing is a godsend for me. And there's authors in my current writers group that I have mentored them all the way through to, their publication, and their sales are doing very, very well as well. And they are, in their late 20s. And if I'd have been doing the thing when I was in my late 20s, it would be a whole different house I'd be buying as I moved to Fredericksburg. But what's the advice I would get? Just do it. I mean, I think that so many people are afraid for so many reasons. The thing is, if I can write a book when my spelling, grammar, and punctuation sucks, anybody can, okay? You can hire people to fix those things, which I highly recommend. Use professionals.
Never skimp on editing.
Oh, you can always tell a really horrible self-published book because of the editing, because of the cover, because it's not professional at all. And it's not an expense to pay for a good editor. It is an investment to pay for a good editor. This next novel I'm doing, I might pay for a good editor and a post-edit proofreader too. I just recently found out that that's a thing. And I've been using my wife as the post-edit proofreader. She's pretty good. But even she misses some stuff every now and then. And I think it's hilarious when stuff gets missed. When stuff actually gets to print, oh man, I love that. A reader will send me an email. Oh, I love your book, but there's a typo on page 2. I love that. Because I immediately go out and fix it. So whenever there's another, edition, quietly disappears. And it's really interesting. The audio producers often find typos as well, because they, working with the narrators, that's a whole different business part. It's very interesting.
I've been helping produce my audiobook for my second book for about a year now. We're finally finishing off the finer details, so that way we could submit it off to Audible for the final quality assurance review. And I remember my friend who narrates the book, Johnny Adams, there were several times where he called me at like 1 a.m. and he's like, Remso, hey, this doesn't sound like something someone would actually say. And I'm like, well, what is it? What the fuck do you have to say? And he's like, you wrote it like this, and like that's not how people talk. Can I put a comma there? Can I not say it with an exclamation point? And I'm like, just make the change. Just do it.
Yeah. And in fact, if you hire the right people and give them the freedom to do their best for you, they make you look better. And it's great. I love that. I really love it. My most recent novel, the narration, I took another step farther out and hired 2 narrators. I have a duet, a man and a woman in this one, and it's coming out really good. I'm just really very excited about it. It's the first book that my wife says she loves.
Wow. It's
always good to make your wife cry. Trust me.
That's the best seal of approval.
Yes, it is. And she, it's like she's always really encouraged my imposter syndrome. Somebody was going to come around the corner suddenly reveal me that I'm a fraud, even though it's like novel number 7, but she's like saying, hey, you're getting pretty good at this. And please, thanks, honey,
It pays the bills.
And then take out the garbage. Yeah. Yeah. So
my gosh.
Hey, I don't underrate the importance of having a spouse that is supportive. Trust me. That is one of the key cornerstones to success if you're being a full-time author. Trust me. Having a supportive spouse is worth the weight in gold.
Awesome. So, Martin, this has been an awesome talk. I've learned a lot. I know the listeners have learned a lot. If people want to go ahead and, get your books, I highly recommend people do that, especially your new novel that just came out. But people want to check out your blog, follow you on social media. I'll have everything in the show notes. But for people that want to hear it, where can they find everything?
Everything's on Amazon. I also have my personal website is martinwilsey.com. But Amazon, you can get it in Kindle, paperback, hardcover, and Audible, all one-stop shopping. Go to my author page and you can see all of my short stories, all of my novels. And if you go to my website, there's a lot of freebies up there too. I think there's like a dozen short story Audibles up there for free. So it's the drug dealer model of marketing. You give them a little taste for free, and then they buy the audiobooks. So it's very effective marketing, as it were.
Whatever works.
Yeah, whatever works. And in fact, it does work. If people, for free, can listen to one of your stories for 30 minutes, they can just get a taste. And I think that's an important part, especially with like Amazon and the preview pages. You get to read so many pages into the novel. If in those pages the reader is scared shitless not to find out what happens next, hey, you've just sold a book. So it's all good.
Awesome stuff. Well, Martin, it's been an absolute blast. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Hey, thanks for having me, dude.
Hey, folks, conversations like this, they cost you nothing, and I don't ask for anything in return, but it literally helps make my day. Please, leaving a 5-star rating and review on Amazon helps the show reach more people. And if you enjoy conversations like this, if you're a budding author or somebody that just wanted to understand the process more, share this episode with a friend. It's amazing what happens when we connect with each other and we're able to share our talents and our knowledge so that way we become better and help elevate other people. As always, go ahead and do me a favor. Go ahead and follow me across the social media space on Al Gore's amazing internet at Hey Remso, HeyRamso. And if you're not on Parler, what's going on with you? I'm just at Remso. If you ever see Remso 2 pop up on there, you have my permission to cyberbully them. Remember, the only people who are free are those with options. I'm Remso W. Martinez. Take care. I'll talk to you later this week.
Check out our other shows and more from the We Are Libertarians network at wearelibertarians.com.